Did you know that pirates were often unofficially sponsored by governments? Over the years, sea brigands were interchangeably referred to by various names. Terms like corsair, buccaneer, privateer, and others were bandied around as synonyms for pirate. However, they are not the same. The confusion becomes even more prominent when the terms overlap, as certain people involved with maritime activities would shift from, for instance, being a privateer to being a pirate, and vice versa. Pirate, meaning brigand in Greek, is a universal term for any crime that involves a massive body of water and a boat of any size. In other words, you can have sea pirates, lake pirates, river pirates, etc. Furthermore, the crimes do not even have to happen at sea. If you were a ship owner or crew member committing crimes on land, you were a pirate. For the sake of this video, we are using pirate as an all-encompassing term for a diverse array of characters. Francis Drake's Loot of a Lifetime, 1579. Francis Drake, one of the most famous sailors in history, was reviled and detested by the Spanish. He was an English privateer who collected endless loot before the beginning of the Golden Age of Piracy. It should be noted that he provided the blueprint for the following generations of pirates. While he was remembered for many adventures, his biggest haul came from a Spanish treasure ship, the Nuestra Señora de la Concepción, a mighty ship. It was called the Cacafuega, fire shitter in English, for its ferocious military abilities. The ship regularly carried treasure from Peru to Panama, but on a fateful day in 1579, it found Drake's golden hind on its tail. Drake captured a Spanish ship near Lima, and upon further probing, he realized that a Spanish treasure ship was nearby. So he sailed west until he caught up with it. Posing as a merchant ship, he pulled up beside the unsuspecting Spanish and opened fire. After capturing and boarding the treasure ship, the crew was surprised by the haul. It had been reported that it took 6 days for his men to unload the loot. François L'Olonnais begins his vengeful spree, 1666. François L'Olonnais, whose real name is John David Now, was most likely born in the small French town of Les Sables-d'Olonne and sold as an indentured servant in the Caribbean early in his life. After his servitude expired in 1660, he became a buccaneer. Shortly after, a shipwreck left him stranded near Campeche for a year as the Spanish killed his entire crew. He survived by hiding among the dead and slipped away with a party of escaped slaves. Thus began his tale of revenge. A Spanish ship was dispatched to kill Francois when he held a town hostage, and he had the entire Spanish crew beheaded except for one. That person relayed L'Olonnais' raison d'être to the authorities. "I shall never henceforward give quarter to any Spaniard whatsoever." True to his word, L'Olonnais would go on many raiding parties against the Spanish in the Caribbean and the surrounding continental lands. His most famed raid was the ransacking of Maracaibo, modern-day Venezuela, in 1666. The conquest of this city took place over a few months, with L'Olonnais and his men torturing, raping, and killing its inhabitants with cruel and brutal proficiency. His next target was Gibraltar, and despite this city's protection by a Spanish force that greatly outnumbered the buccaneers, L'Olonnais managed to beat them and hold the city for ransom. Despite getting the ransom, the French pirates still looted the city, leaving the inhabitants in utter chaos. However, his most brutal reported act came to pass during his adventures around modern-day Honduras. While L'Olonnais was interrogating 2 Spanish prisoners for a safe, clear route to San Pedro in contemporary Belize, he cut open one of them, tore his heart out, and gnawed at it right in front of everyone's eyes. His subsequent exploits saw him attacking other Spanish-held cities such as Campeche, Guatemala, and San Pedro Sula. Captain Henry Morgan attacks Portobello, 1668. Henry Morgan was a Welsh sailor born sometime in 1635. It is unknown how he made it to the Caribbean, but early accounts suggest that he served under Sir Christopher Minks shortly before the sack of Campeche. He would also serve under Edward Mansfield, a seasoned privateer with the backing of Sir Thomas Modyford, the governor of Jamaica in 1664 and the man who would provide Morgan with the letter of marque and instructions to attack Spanish settlements. Morgan's first major successes were the invasions of Puerto Príncipe and Portobello, modern-day Cuba and Panama, respectively. His letter of marque, however, did not allow him to attack people on land, only at sea. He circumvented this rule by letting Modyford know that the Spanish were planning a future invasion of English lands in the Caribbean and that his attacks were preemptive. The 1668 invasion of Portobello was a stunning affair. Morgan achieved this feat by having his men paddle several miles on 23 small canoes and invade the city at dawn. While there were some casualties, Portobello was taken rather quickly, and Morgan immediately held it for ransom, demanding 350,000 pesos from the president of Panama, Don Agustin. The president tried to recapture the city, but having failed in his endeavor, he resorted to bargaining with Morgan and renegotiating the ransom to 100,000 pesos. Of course, Morgan had plundered the city dry by that point, taking money and goods to Motorford and Port Royal. Having overstepped the boundaries of his letter of marque, Morgan was reprimanded by Motorford, with the governor even writing to King Charles II to let him know of Morgan's disreputable ways. However, the English public, both in Jamaica and back home in London, hailed Morgan as a hero. Henry Avery heads east, 1695. Western history gained its first arch-pirate in 1694. Born near Plymouth, England, Avery began his pirate career in the Caribbean. After leading a mutiny, capturing a French ship, and recruiting a force totaling 150, Henry Avery looked to the east. Entering the Mandeb Strait, modern-day Bab el-Mandeb, into the Red Sea, Avery ran into 5 other pirate captains: Richard Want, William Mays, Joseph Farrow, Thomas Wake, and Thomas Tew. The men agreed to unite their ships into a massive fleet, with Avery as the admiral, to capture a convoy of 25 Mughal ships. The 2 largest ships of the empire were part of the convoy, with the 600-ton Fata Muhammad escorting a far more significant, fiercer ship that was the pride and joy of the Mughals, the 1,600-ton, 80-cannon-strong Ganji Sawai, exceeding treasure. After about 5 days of pursuit and losing the Amity's crew and captain, Thomas Tew, Avery managed to capture Fata Muhammad, whose crew gave up without any resistance. Ganji Sawai, however, put up a massive resistance, which resulted in a fierce battle. The spoils from the Ganji Sawai and Fata Muhammad made Avery and his men rich beyond their wildest dreams. However, a veritable death sentence awaited most of the pirates involved in this raid. Henry Avery escaped justice unscathed and disappeared from historical records. Edward Blackbeard Teach blockades Charlestown, 1718. If there were ever an epitome of piracy, it would undoubtedly be the single most popular sea brigand in history, the man who would become the very synonym for the word pirate, the dark-haired, tall, broad-shouldered Englishman Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard. Edward Teach's most extraordinary claim to fame was his infamous blockade of Charleston Port in late May 1718, the same town that Charles Vane would blockade mere months later. After entering with his fleet, Teach captured around 9 ships that tried to pass the Charlestown bar, ransacking them and relieving them of their valuables. Charleston was an important port for the British American colonies, and the blockade was a lot more than a pirate harassing entering ships. It effectively crippled the economy of the British Empire. Interestingly, Teach required nothing from the town except medical supplies for his crew. He threatened to execute the captured hostages from the ships he ransacked if the local governance did not comply. Of course, Teach got away with all these crimes due to bribing the right people in the town and intimidating the rest. Black Bart joins the Portuguese fleet, 1719 to 1720. In terms of popularity, Black Bart was almost as well known as Blackbeard and Avery. He would go down in history as probably the most successful pirate, as he captured over 470 ships in his lifetime. Bartholomew Roberts was born in Wales and had been a sailor since he was 13 years old. A ship he was on ended up being boarded by pirates, with Howell Davis at the helm. Davis took an instant liking to Roberts, and though he was extremely reluctant to do so, the Welshman joined Davis's crew. When the governor of Principe's men killed Davis, his crew swore vengeance. The best man to lead them in this endeavor was the only other Welshman on board. After avenging the former captain and capturing a few ships, the crew members found themselves in Brazil. Between 1719 and 1720, the first year of Roberts' captaincy, they would grab their first major prize. As they were on the Brazilian coast, they spotted the annual Portuguese treasure fleet of 42 armed ships. Black Bart raised the Portuguese flag to the mast, joined the fleet casually, and identified the smallest ship out of the fierce naval artillery of the large vessels. Under cover of the night, the crew took over the vessel and began investigating. They found out that the wealthiest and most significant vessel was the Sagrada Familia, manned by 170 men. Despite being outnumbered, Roberts and his men devised a plan to capture the ship. They approached the ship in broad daylight, captured it without firing a single shot, and stole around 80,000 gold coins and a diamond-laden cross reserved for the Portuguese king. The crew escaped to the Caribbean with the Portuguese royal vessel. Qing Shi dominates the South China Sea, 1808. Qing Shi, a girl born on the poverty-stricken streets of Guangdong Province in southeast China, rose to become the most successful female pirate in history. Qing Shi had 1,800 ships and around 80,000 pirates at the height of her power, although the numbers are still being debated by historians. At a young age, she caught the attention of Zheng Yi, a notorious pirate commander, and demanded equal control of his fleet as a condition of marriage. After the death of her husband, she became the unofficial commander of the Guangdong Pirate Confederation. She married her adopted son, Zhang Bao, to ensure her position as the head of the pirate fleet. Zhang Bao was one of the commanders of the Red Flag Fleet. Qing Shi implemented codes of conduct for the fleet, encouraging unity and loyalty above all else. She continued to raid and loot around the South China Sea, disrupting the Qing dynasty's salt monopoly in the region. She turned the Confederation into a disciplined organization that collected taxes to permit trade. The displeased Qing government decided to go toe-to-toe with the pirates. In 1808, the Qing Navy began its attempts to subdue the raiders, but they were outnumbered and outclassed by the vastly superior Pirate Confederation. In just 1 year, naval skirmishes and epic battles reduced the Guangdong Navy to half. 63 out of 135 ships near Guangdong were destroyed. Zhang Bao dealt a significant blow in the unofficial war when he destroyed a fleet of 35 Qing ships near Mazhou Island. At their wits' end, the Qing officials were forced to ask for foreign help. After joining forces with the Portuguese, the Chinese government cornered the pirates and forced a deal. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about pirates, check out our book, The Golden Age of Piracy, a captivating guide to the role of pirates in maritime history during the early modern period, including stories of Anne Bonny, Sir Francis Drake, and William Kidd. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.